My name is Megan Brooks. I was 38 years old the day my parents sold my inheritance for $214,000 and told me it was for the good of the family. I remember the sound first. The click of my father's pen against the glass kitchen table. 7:15 a.m. Rain tapped softly against the window above the sink while my mother folded napkins that did not need folding. She would not look at me. Neither of them would. The house smelled like burnt toast and old coffee. "We already signed," my father said. Just like that. Not even an apology. The land my grandfather left me, the only thing he ever put fully in my name, was gone before I even knew it was listed. 6 wooded acres outside Millfield. A small cabin with a green metal roof. A rusted wind chime hanging from the porch. I used to sleep there during summers when I was a kid. My grandfather called it the one honest place left. My brother Darren needed money again. Another failed business. Another pile of debt nobody was supposed to mention directly. So my parents decided family mattered more than legal paperwork. More than me. What they did not know, what none of them knew, was that Grandpa had trusted me with something 3 months before he died. Something he made me promise not to discuss unless I absolutely had to. I sat there quietly while my father explained why I should move on. I even nodded once. Then I asked to borrow the old family document box from the basement. My mother froze when I said that. Just for half a second. But I saw it. And in that moment, I knew there was something inside that house they were terrified I might find. By the end of that year, one person would lose their marriage. One would lose their business. And someone was going to beg me for a signature they should have never needed in the first place. If you've ever been treated like the disposable child in your own family, this story is for you. And trust me, stay until the end because the final document changed everything. Part 1, the breakfast table. My father tapped that pen 5 more times before anyone spoke again. Click, click, click. Each sound landed harder than the last. I kept staring at the sugar packet beside my coffee. One corner was damp from where condensation slid off my glass. I remember thinking that was strange. Such a small thing to notice when your parents just told you they sold something that legally belonged to you. But pain works like that. Your brain grabs tiny details because the bigger truth feels too heavy. My mother finally sat down across from me. She folded her hands tightly in her lap. Her wedding ring kept catching the kitchen light. "Megan," she said softly, "you have to understand the pressure Darren was under." Not hello. Not sorry. Pressure. Outside, a truck rolled slowly past the house. Gravel cracked under the tires. I looked at my father. "How long did you know?" He rubbed his jaw before answering. "About 6 weeks." 6 weeks. They had Sunday dinners with me during those 6 weeks. My mother texted me photos of her garden during those 6 weeks. My father helped me replace a dead battery in my car during those 6 weeks. And the entire time, they already knew. I picked up my coffee cup but did not drink from it. My hand was shaking too much. "Who signed for me?" The room went still. My mother looked down immediately. My father leaned back in his chair. It was handled. That sentence changed something inside me. Handled. Like I was paperwork. Like I was dead already. The faucet dripped once behind me. I stood up too fast and hit my knee against the table corner. Pain shot up my leg. I almost cursed but stopped myself halfway through. My father hated swearing in the house. Funny what habits survive betrayal. "You forged my signature?" I asked. "No," my father said quickly, too quickly. "It wasn't like that." "Then explain it to me." Neither of them answered. The silence told me enough. My younger brother Darren had always been the center of every emergency. Every conversation bent toward him eventually. Darren lost jobs. Darren needed loans. Darren had bad luck. Darren made mistakes. When I was 16 and got pneumonia, My mother left the hospital room twice to answer Darren's phone calls. When I bought my first house alone at 32, my father spent the celebration dinner talking about Darren's business ideas. I learned early that my role in the family was stability. Reliable people get overlooked. That morning, I realized reliable people also get sacrificed. My mother pushed a plate toward me. Toast, eggs, cold already. You need to eat something. I actually laughed a little at that. Not because it was funny, because I thought I might cry if I didn't. I lost Grandpa's land this morning, I said quietly. I don't think toast fixes that. My mother's eyes filled immediately. That almost made it worse. Because she did feel bad. Just not bad enough to stop it. A clock ticked somewhere in the living room. My father cleared his throat. Darren was desperate. And now, he's getting back on his feet. How much did he need? My father hesitated. That hesitation mattered. How much? I asked again. About $148,000. I stared at him. The property sold for $214,000. Neither of them spoke. The difference hit me instantly. $66,000. Gone. Or hidden. Or used somewhere they did not want explained. And suddenly, this stopped feeling like panic. It started feeling planned. My mother noticed the change in my face. I could tell. Megan, she whispered carefully, please don't do this. Do what? Ask questions. I walked to the sink slowly. The kitchen tile felt cold through my shoes. My grandfather's old wind chime still hung outside near the porch. The metal tubes moved softly in the rain. He gave that wind chime to me when I was 11. Listen carefully when it rings, he used to say. Bad people get nervous around silence. At the time, I thought he was joking. Now I wasn't so sure. I dried my hands on a towel, even though they were not wet. Then I turned around. I want the document box. My father frowned immediately. Why? Because Grandpa kept records. That stuff is old. I know. Megan. The box. My mother inhaled sharply. There it was again. Fear. Not anger. Not annoyance. Fear. My father stood slowly from his chair. I noticed his shoulders looked smaller than I remembered. Age had caught him hard the last 2 years, deep lines around his mouth, slight tremor in his left hand. For a second, he looked tired instead of cruel. Then he said the wrong thing. You always make things harder than they need to be. Something inside my chest tightened so suddenly I had to grip the counter. I almost broke right there. Not because of the land. Not even because of the betrayal. Because I realized they truly believed I was the difficult one for reacting to it. That was the part that hurt deepest. The rain had stopped outside. Water dripped steadily from the porch roof. My father walked toward the basement door without another word. I heard the wooden steps creak beneath his weight. My mother kept staring at the table. Finally, she whispered, Your grandfather loved Darren too, you know. I looked at her carefully. That isn't the sentence you think it is. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say more. Then the basement light clicked off downstairs. A few seconds later, my father came back carrying the old gray document box against his chest. Dust covered the lid. The metal latch was already unlocked. I noticed that immediately. And I noticed something else too. One file folder inside the box looked newer than everything around it. Bright yellow. No dust. Like someone had touched it recently. But I said nothing. Not then. Part 2, Grandpa's cabin. I did not open the document box right away. That surprised even me. You spend your whole drive home thinking about answers. Then suddenly the answers sit 3 feet away on your dining table, and your hands refuse to touch them. I left the box beside the couch all night. At 2:13 a.m., I walked past it to get water. At 4:40 7:40 a.m., I checked the front door lock twice for no reason. By morning, my apartment smelled like stale coffee and cardboard dust. The box was still waiting for me. So instead of opening it, I drove to Grandpa's cabin. I wish I could explain that decision better. But grief has its own direction sometimes. The cabin sat 40 minutes outside Millfield near the edge of Blackwater Creek. The same narrow road curved through rows of pine trees just like it had when I was a child. My grandfather used to whistle while driving it, always the same tune. 3 short notes. Pause. Then 2 more. I caught myself listening for it halfway there. The weather had turned colder overnight. Wet leaves stuck to the road. My tires crushed them softly as I pulled into the gravel driveway. The green metal roof looked duller now. Older. The wind chime still hung from the porch beam. 1 tube was missing. I stood there for a minute staring at it. Funny how damage looks smaller from far away. The front door jammed halfway before opening fully. Same as always. Grandpa never fixed it because he claimed stubborn doors kept dishonest people out. Inside, the air smelled like cedar wood and old smoke. Dust floated through thin bands of sunlight near the windows. The couch still had the brown blanket folded over one arm. The small kitchen clock had stopped at 9, 18 sometime years earlier. A stack of fishing magazines remained beside Grandpa's chair exactly where he left them. For 1 second, my chest tightened so hard I thought I might leave. Then I noticed the coffee mug. White ceramic. Tiny crack near the handle. Not Grandpa's. I walked closer slowly. There was dust everywhere except around the mug. Someone had been here recently. A cold feeling moved through me. Not fear exactly. Recognition. Like the room had just admitted something. I checked the bedroom first, nothing missing, then the back storage closet, still locked. But when I opened the desk drawer beside Grandpa's chair, I found fresh scratch marks around the lock. Someone had forced it open before. I sat down carefully. The wood creaked beneath me. My grandfather died 11 months earlier from heart failure. 78 years old. Quiet death. No dramatic hospital scene. No final speech. Just a phone call at 6:52 in the morning while I was brushing my teeth. I still remember toothpaste foam on my hand when the nurse said the words. After the funeral, my parents handled most of the estate paperwork. I trusted them then. Why wouldn't I? Families are dangerous exactly because trust feels normal at first. The cabin had been the one thing Grandpa transferred directly to me before he died. The land surrounding it, too. He insisted on handling that part personally. It needs to stay with someone steady, he told me one afternoon. We were sitting on the porch while rain hit the trees. I remember because his hands were trembling slightly when he lit his cigarette. What does that mean? I asked him. He smiled without looking at me. It means some people confuse love with rescue. At the time, I thought he meant Darren's gambling years. Now I wondered if he meant something bigger. I opened the desk drawer again. Inside sat old receipts, fishing licenses, batteries, and one faded envelope with my name written across the front in Grandpa's handwriting. Megan. Nothing else. My stomach dropped a little. The envelope felt thicker than paper alone. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single key. Small brass. And a folded note. If you are reading this, something already went wrong. I stopped breathing for a second. Outside, wind moved through the pine trees with a low, rushing sound. I unfolded the rest slowly. The key opens the lockbox beneath the floorboards under my bed. If your parents ever pressure you about the land, do not argue first. Look there before you trust anybody. I read that sentence 3 times. Then a fourth. The paper shook slightly in my hand. Pressure you about the land. Not if. Ever. Kay knew. Some part of him already knew. The bedroom suddenly felt smaller around me. I walked there too quickly and hit my shoulder against the hallway wall. Pain shot down my arm. Under the bed sat old storage bins, boots, and one loose floorboard near the back corner. I knelt carefully. Dust covered my jeans instantly. The board lifted easier than expected. Underneath was a black metal lockbox. Still there. Still locked. I stared at it for several seconds before reaching for the key. My hands would not stop shaking now. Not from anger. From the feeling that my grandfather had spent his final months preparing for something he never fully explained. The brass key slid into place smoothly. I turned it once. The lock clicked open. Inside sat 3 items. A property survey map, a sealed envelope, and a small cassette tape labeled only with one date. March 14. No year. I touched the tape first, then stopped myself. Because suddenly, I understood something important. Grandpa did not hide this from strangers. He hid it from family. That realization sat heavier than anything else so far. I reached for the envelope slowly. But before I could open it, headlights flashed across the cabin window from outside. A vehicle had just pulled into the driveway. And nobody besides my parents knew I was there. Part 3, the missing signature. The headlights stayed still for a few seconds. Engine running. I froze beside the bed, with Grandpa's envelope still in my hand. Outside, gravel cracked softly under tires as the engine finally shut off. Then silence. The kind that makes every small sound feel dangerous. The wind chime outside moved once. Clink. I slid the lockbox back under the floorboards fast enough to scrape my knuckles against the wood. Blood appeared immediately across 2 fingers. I barely noticed. Another car door opened outside. Then closed. Heavy footsteps crossed the porch slowly. Not rushed. That scared me more. Whoever it was felt comfortable here. I stood up too quickly and hit the side of the bed frame with my thigh. Pain spread instantly through my leg. I pressed the envelope flat against my stomach and listened. 1 step. Then another. The front doorknob moved halfway before stopping. A pause. Then a knock. 3 times. I almost answered immediately out of pure reflex. Small town habits, familiar place, familiar sounds. But something stopped me. Because Grandpa never knocked 3 times. He always knocked twice. I stayed still. Another pause. Then a man's voice came through the door. Megan. I recognized it instantly. Tom Avery. My grandfather's old attorney. Relief hit me so hard my knees nearly gave out. I opened the door halfway. Tom stood there in a dark rain jacket holding a leather folder beneath one arm. 65 years old, tall, gray mustache, smelled faintly like peppermint gum and wet wool. But he looked nervous. Very nervous. His eyes moved, past me into the cabin immediately. You came alone, he asked quietly. Yes. He exhaled once. Good. That word landed strangely. I stepped aside and let him enter. The cabin floor creaked under his shoes as he looked around carefully, like he expected someone else to already be inside. What are you doing here? I asked. Tom removed his glasses slowly and wiped rainwater from them with his sleeve. Your mother called me yesterday. Cold moved through my chest again. What did she say? She asked whether your grandfather ever left additional estate records. Not paperwork. Records. Different word. Different meaning. I watched him carefully now. And what did you tell her? Tom hesitated too long. That depends. On what? On whether you already opened the box. The room felt smaller again. I thought about lying. Then I remembered the hidden lockbox beneath the floorboards. I found something, I admitted. Tom closed his eyes briefly. Not relief. Regret. When did your parents tell you about the land sale? He asked. Yesterday morning. And before that, nobody contacted you? No. Tom nodded once to himself, like a missing piece had finally clicked into place. Rain started lightly again outside, tiny taps against the porch roof. Finally, he sat down at the kitchen table and placed the leather folder carefully in front of him. Megan, he said quietly, there's something wrong with the paperwork. My throat tightened immediately. How wrong? He slid one paper across the table toward me. Property transfer authorization. Dated 7 weeks earlier. My signature sat at the bottom. Except it wasn't mine. Not even close. The letters leaned too sharply. The M looked wrong. Whoever forged it copied the shape but not the pressure. I press harder when nervous. Always have. I stared at it for several seconds. Tom watched my face carefully. You're certain? He asked. That isn't my signature. I know. The clock above the stove ticked softly behind us. You knew, I whispered. Tom rubbed his forehead slowly. I suspected. Why didn't you call me? His jaw tightened. Because your father claimed you approved everything verbally and simply rushed the signature. That makes no sense. No, he agreed quietly. It doesn't. Anger rose inside me fast now. Clean anger, sharp enough to cut through shock. You notarized this. Tom looked down immediately. No. I blinked once. What? The notary line was added later. I stared at him. You're telling me somebody forged my signature and forged notarization too. Tom did not answer directly, which was answer enough. Outside, thunder rolled faintly somewhere deeper in the hills. I sat down slowly across from him because my legs suddenly felt weak. For 1 week, Tom said carefully, I thought maybe there had been some misunderstanding inside the family. Then I received a copy of the finalized transfer. He tapped the paper once. That signature bothered me immediately. My heart kept beating harder now. Not because I was surprised anymore. Because pieces were fitting together too cleanly. The missing money. The fear on my mother's face. The recently touched file folder. The hidden lockbox. This was never panic. This was coordination. Tom opened the leather folder again and removed another document. This is the part I still don't understand. He handed it to me. A survey map. Same property. Same land. Except one section near the creek was marked separately in red ink. Not included in transfer. I frowned. What is this? That, Tom said quietly, is 17 acres nobody mentioned during the sale. I looked up sharply. What? Your grandfather divided the property before his death. My mouth went dry. The cabin parcel sold for $214,000, but the creek parcel remained untouched. I stared back down at the map. 17 acres. Hidden. Or forgotten. No, Tom corrected softly, almost reading my thoughts. Not forgotten. He pointed toward the bottom corner. A trust designation sat there in small print. Beneficiary transfer, pending secondary authorization. What does that mean? Tom leaned back slowly. It means your grandfather placed part of the land into protected transfer status. Protected from who? I did not even need to ask it aloud. Tom's silence answered anyway. The rain outside got heavier. Water dripped steadily through the old gutter beside the porch. I looked toward Grandpa's bedroom without meaning to. Toward the hidden envelope still sitting under my jacket on the chair. Tom noticed. There's more, isn't there? I hesitated, then nodded once. His face tightened immediately. Megan, before you show me anything, I need you to understand something. What? He lowered his voice. Your father came to my office 3 days ago. A cold feeling moved through my stomach. He asked, whether any older documents still existed regarding the property. And Tom looked directly at me now. When I refused to answer, he got angry. That alone did not surprise me. But then Tom said the part that did. He asked specifically about a cassette tape. The room went completely still. I had not mentioned the tape. Not once. Which meant only one thing. My father already knew it existed. And somehow, my grandfather knew one day I would need to find it first. Part 4, Darren's collapse. Nothing happened for 2 weeks. Then something did. During those 14 days, I barely slept. The cassette tape stayed hidden inside my coat closet beneath an old shoebox. I moved it twice for no reason. Once at 1:20 a.m., another time before work. Fear changes your routines quietly. You stop standing near windows. You check parking lots longer. You jump when unknown numbers call your phone. Tom told me not to confront my parents yet. He wanted time to verify the trust paperwork connected to the hidden 17 acres near Blackwater Creek. Do not show anybody the tape, he warned me. Not even Darren. Especially not Darren. That sentence stayed with me. Outside my office window, March rain kept turning the sidewalks silver every afternoon. Customers came and went while I processed invoices and answered emails like a normal person. Meanwhile, my entire family felt rot underneath me. By the second week, my mother started texting constantly. Are you okay? Can we talk? Your father is worried. That last one almost made me laugh. My father was not worried. He was trying to measure how much I knew. I stopped answering after Tuesday. Wednesday night, Darren called for the first time in months. 11:08 p.m. I stared at his name on my screen while the phone vibrated across my kitchen counter. Darren only called late when something was wrong. Or expensive. I answered on the fourth ring. What? Silence first. Then breathing. You talked to Mom. His voice sounded rough, tired. Yes. Another pause. You shouldn't drag this out. I leaned back slowly in my chair. The apartment heater clicked softly behind me. That's an interesting way to describe fraud. It wasn't fraud. My signature says otherwise. Silence again. Too long. Then Darren exhaled hard into the phone. You always do this. Do what? Turn everything into courtrooms and evidence. The calmness of that sentence hit harder than yelling would have. Because he genuinely believed this was my fault for noticing. I walked toward the kitchen sink and stared out into the dark parking lot below. You took Grandpa's land. No, Darren snapped suddenly. Dad handled it. There it was. Immediate distance. Like even he did not want fingerprints on this anymore. Where's the money, Darren? A cabinet door slammed somewhere on his end of the call. I used it. All of it. No answer. My stomach tightened. Darren. He inhaled sharply through his nose. Most of it. How much is left? Another silence. Then finally. About 12,000. I actually pulled the phone away from my ear for a second. The sale happened less than 2 months earlier. $214,000. Gone. I closed my eyes. What did you do? It wasn't one thing. His voice cracked slightly now. First real emotion I had heard from him. The business was drowning. Payroll alone was 31 grand behind. Then the equipment lease. You told them your business could still recover. It could. Past tense. Important. I caught that immediately. My fingers tightened around the counter edge. What happened? Darren did not answer right away. Instead, I heard a lighter flick twice before catching. He quit smoking years earlier. Or claimed he did. Finally, he spoke again. The supplier pulled out Monday. My chest sank slowly. How bad? He laughed once, short, bitter. The building owner changed the locks yesterday morning. Outside, headlights moved through the parking lot below my apartment. A dog barked somewhere far off. You lost the business. I'm restructuring. No, I said quietly. You lost it. That silence hurt him. I could tell. For a second, I almost felt sorry for him. Then I remembered the forged signature. The hidden paperwork. The lies. Darren had always been good at becoming the victim. Inside disasters, he created himself. You think I wanted this? He asked suddenly. No, I answered honestly. I think you expected someone else to clean it up again. His breathing changed immediately. Faster now. Angrier. You have no idea what pressure feels like. I nearly responded. Then stopped myself. Because I suddenly remembered being 19 years old and lending Darren $4,800 from my college savings after he wrecked his truck drunk. He cried in my driveway that night. Promised repayment. Promised change. I never saw the money again. Funny how families train you slowly. One emergency at a time. I didn't call to fight, Darren muttered. Then why did you call? The line stayed quiet for several seconds. When he spoke again, his voice sounded smaller. Dad said you found something. Ice moved through me instantly. What does that mean? He thinks Grandpa left paperwork behind. So my father was talking now. Panicking. Good. I turned off the kitchen light and kept watching the parking lot below. What exactly did Dad say? That you went to the cabin. And that you've been asking questions. Not answering. Careful wording. I heard it immediately. Darren, I said slowly, what aren't you telling me? The lighter clicked again. Then stopped. Finally, he spoke so quietly, I almost missed it. There was another buyer. Every muscle in my body tightened. What? The first deal fell apart before the sale. Why? I don't know. You always know. Silence. Then, the guy kept asking about mineral access rights near the creek. The room seemed to tilt slightly around me. 17 hidden acres. Near the creek. My grandfather separating land before death. Protected transfer status. None of this was random. When did this happen? I asked carefully. About 3 months before Grandpa died. 3 months. The same period Grandpa gave me the hidden key. Outside, rain started again against my windows. Soft at first. Then heavier. What did Grandpa say about it? I asked. Darren hesitated. Too long again. He got angry. How angry? He threw them off the property. I stared into the darkness outside, my apartment. A memory surfaced suddenly. Grandpa standing near the creek one summer afternoon telling me, some land should stay buried. At the time, I thought he meant family history. Now I wasn't sure anymore. He was about to explain something else, Darren said quietly. Then his phone beeped sharply in his ear. Another incoming call. He stopped talking immediately. Who's calling you? I asked. No answer. Darren. His breathing changed. Fast now. Nervous. And when he finally spoke again, his voice had almost dropped to a whisper. They found out you went to the cabin. Before I could ask who he meant, the line went dead. Part 5, the call at 11:42 p.m. For 1 week, I thought it was over. Then the call came. Not dramatic at first. Just my phone vibrating against the nightstand at 11:42 p.m. while rain hit the bedroom window in slow, uneven taps. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Something made me answer anyway. Hello. Breathing. Then a woman's voice I did not recognize. Is this Megan Brooks? Yes. A pause. My name is Linda Caro. I work at Millfield Regional Bank. I sat up slowly in bed. The digital clock beside me glowed red against the dark room. What is this regarding? Another hesitation. Like she regretted calling already. I think you should come down here tomorrow morning. My stomach tightened instantly. Why? I can't discuss details over the phone. Then why call me at midnight? Silence. Then quietly. Because your father came in today. Every muscle in my body went still. What did he want? He requested access to a safety deposit box connected to your grandfather's trust records. The room suddenly felt cold. He doesn't have access. No. Relief came first. Then fear immediately after. Did he get inside? No, but he was not happy. I pushed the blankets aside and stood up. My feet hit cold hardwood floor. What does this have to do with me? Linda inhaled slowly. Because your name is listed as secondary authorization. The exact same phrase from the survey paperwork. My heartbeat quickened. What's in the box? I don't know. Then how do you know it matters? This time, her silence felt different. Nervous. Not cautious. Finally, she answered. Because your father threatened legal action if we refused him again. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere far away. I walked into the kitchen without turning lights on. When? This afternoon around 3. I looked down at my stove clock. 11:47 p.m. Why wait almost 9 hours to call me? Like she heard the question forming, Linda spoke again. I didn't call sooner because I wasn't sure if it was my place. What changed? A long pause. Then, he said your grandfather made a mistake leaving things unfinished. I closed my eyes slowly. Grandpa did not leave things unfinished. That man labeled extension cords in permanent marker. He paid bills 3 months early. He alphabetized fishing hooks. If something remained hidden, it was hidden on purpose. When can I come in? I asked. We open at 9. I'll be there. The call ended quietly after that. No goodbye. Just dead air. I stood in my kitchen for several minutes afterward, listening to rainwater slide through the gutters outside my apartment building. Then I opened the hall closet and took out the cassette tape again. March 14. No year. No explanation. The plastic case felt colder than before. At 12:26 a.m., I finally found an old tape recorder in the back of my storage cabinet. Dust covered half the buttons. I had not touched it since college. The batteries barely worked. I sat at my kitchen table while the machine hummed softly in front of me. For a second, I almost stopped. Because some part of me already knew this tape would change things permanently. Then I pressed play. Static crackled first. Low and rough. A chair scraped somewhere in the background. Then my grandfather's voice filled the room. Weak. Older than I remembered. If this recording is being played, something has already gone wrong. I stopped breathing. Rain tapped steadily against the windows, while the tape hissed softly beneath his words. I am making this because I no longer trust verbal promises in this family. His voice shook slightly there. Not with fear. Disappointment. I love my children, I do, but love and trust are not the same thing. I gripped the edge of the table harder. A cough interrupted the recording. Paper rustled. Then Grandpa continued. The creek land must remain untouched. Creek land. 17 acres. My heart pounded harder now. There are records beneath Millfield connected to that property. Old records. The kind people become greedy over. Static swallowed part of the next sentence. I leaned closer. They approached Darren first because they knew he needed money. Cold spread through my chest. They. Same word Darren used on the phone. The tape crackled again. I told them no, repeatedly. Another cough. Longer this time. I transferred protection authority to Megan because she asks questions before signing things. Tears hit my hand before I realized I was crying. Not loud crying. Just silent tears sliding down while his voice filled the kitchen. She notices details. I covered my mouth suddenly because I almost broke right there. Nobody in my family ever described me kindly when talking about caution. Usually, they called it difficult, or cold, or stubborn. Grandpa called it careful. The tape clicked softly. Then his voice lowered further. If anyone pressures you to sell, especially family, do not trust urgency. Urgency is where bad people hide. Outside, wind rattled something metal near my balcony. The tape continued. There is one final document secured separately from the trust paperwork. Thomas Avery knows part of it, but not all. Tom knew only part. Important. I did not tell him everything because I feared he might be pressured too. The tape hissed loudly for several seconds. Then Grandpa said the sentence that changed everything. The mineral rights beneath the creek property were independently assessed in 1998. I frowned immediately. Mineral rights. The tape crackled again. Estimated value exceeds $2.8 million. I actually pulled away from the recorder. My kitchen suddenly felt silent except for rain. 2.8 million. The cabin sale. The forged paperwork. The hidden 17 acres. This was never about rescuing Darren. That was just the excuse. The tape kept rolling. I refused every offer. A pause. Then someone inside my own family began asking questions they should not have known to ask. My stomach turned slowly. Not strangers first. Family first. The tape hissed sharply again before Grandpa spoke one final time. If Megan is hearing this, then I was right to worry. Another cough. Weak now. Tired. I am sorry for what this will cost you. The recording clicked off. Just like that. No goodbye. No final wisdom. Only silence. I sat there until almost 2:00 a.m. staring at the tape recorder, while the refrigerator hummed softly behind me. Finally, I reached for my phone. 3 missed calls. All from my mother. And one voicemail left 12 minutes earlier. I pressed play. Her voice came through shaking badly. Megan, please call me back. A pause. Then quieter. Your father is gone. The message ended there. Part 6, my mother finally broke. I called my mother back at 2:07 a.m. She answered before the first full ring. Megan. Her voice sounded thin, frayed around the edges. What do you mean he's gone? A sharp inhale. Then crying. Not loud. The kind people try to hide by covering the phone. He left after dinner, she whispered. He took his truck and didn't come home. I rubbed my forehead slowly and looked at the cassette recorder still sitting on my kitchen table. Did you call Darren? Yes. And? He can't find him either. That answer bothered me immediately. Not because Darren failed to find him. Because she called Darren before calling the police. Families protect their own disasters first. Always. When did he leave? I asked. Around 6. 8 hours missing. Outside, rainwater dripped steadily from my balcony railing. Mom, I said carefully, did Dad know about the mineral rights? Silence. Long enough to hurt. Then I heard something small on her end. Ice clinking against glass. She was drinking. My mother almost never drank. What did he tell you? She whispered. There it was. Not denial. Confirmation. I closed my eyes slowly. How long have you known? He only found out last year. From who? Another silence. Then, Darren. The apartment suddenly felt too warm. I walked toward the window and cracked it open. Cold night air rushed inside, carrying the smell of wet pavement. "Tell me the truth," I said quietly. "All of it." My mother started crying harder then. For several seconds, she could barely speak at all. And suddenly, I realized something important. She was not crying because she got caught. She was crying because the lie finally collapsed under its own weight. "When your grandfather got sick," she whispered, "everything changed." I leaned against the kitchen counter and listened. "Your father was terrified." "Of what?" "Money." Simple answer. Honest answer. Maybe the first honest thing anyone had said to me in weeks. "He retired too early," she continued. "The investments dropped after the market crash. Darren kept asking for help. Then the hospital bills started." I remembered those months. Dad snapping over small things. Mom pretending everything was normal at Christmas. Darren disappearing for days, whenever money came up. "We thought the land sale would fix everything," she whispered. "Way. Not he. Way. That mattered. You forged my signature." "I didn't." "But you knew." Silence again. "Yes." The word came out broken. A car passed outside below my apartment. Tires hissed softly across wet roads. "You could have told me," I said. "We thought you'd say no." "You didn't even ask." "We were ashamed." I almost laughed at that. Not because it was funny. Because shame after betrayal feels insulting somehow. Like they still wanted moral credit for feeling bad while doing it. My mother sniffed quietly into the phone. "Your father kept saying he would fix it later." "Fix it." Another family phrase. Everything temporary until consequences arrived. "Did he know Grandpa left me the creek property?" I asked. "No." That answer came fast. Too fast. I stayed quiet. Finally, she corrected herself softly. "Not at first." There it was. The real truth always arrives second. "When did he find out?" "About 4 months ago." My chest tightened. "Before Grandpa died." "How?" "I don't know exactly." "Lie." "Small one." "But obvious." My mother always paused before lying. Even as a kid, I could tell. I used to watch her blink twice fast whenever she hid something. She did it now, too. I could hear it somehow even through silence. "Mom." "Nothing." "Tell me." Another shaky breath. "He found papers in your grandfather's garage." "What papers?" "I never saw them." "But Dad did." "Yes." I stared out the window into the dark parking lot below. A street lamp flickered once near the entrance gate. "Who are they?" I asked quietly. "What?" "The people asking about the land." No answer. "Mom." "I don't know." Lie again. Bigger this time. Because fear entered her voice immediately after the question. Not confusion. Fear. "You do know." She started crying harder. "Megan." "Who are they?" Finally, she whispered something so quietly, I almost missed it. "Developers." I frowned. "Developers don't chase mineral rights." "No," she admitted. "These ones do." That sentence sat wrong instantly. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere far away again. I lowered my voice. "What aren't you saying?" My mother inhaled sharply, then stopped herself. Like she almost crossed a line she could not uncross afterward. "Mom." "I can't." "Yes, you can." "No," she whispered. "You don't understand your father when he gets scared." That sentence landed deeper than she realized. Not angry. Scared. I suddenly remembered Dad punching a hole through the garage wall when Darren disappeared during his gambling years. Remembered how he sat alone afterward, staring at his bleeding knuckles like they belonged to someone else. My father was not cruel in the loud way. He was cruel in the desperate way. The kind that convinces itself survival excuses everything. When did he leave tonight? I asked again. Around 6. Did you fight? Yes. About me? No. That answer surprised me. Then what? Silence. Then. The tape. Every muscle in my body tightened. How does he know about the tape? I told him. I shut my eyes immediately. Not anger this time. Exhaustion. Pure exhaustion. He asked whether you found anything at the cabin, she whispered. I thought maybe if he knew there was proof, he would stop. Stop what? Another silence. Then finally. Trying to get the rest of the land. Cold spread through me slowly. Not the cabin. Not the sold parcel. The hidden 17 acres. My father was still trying to access it. Even now. He said there's still time before transfer finalization, my mother continued weakly. He thinks if you sign voluntarily, none of this becomes public. Public? There it was again. Not guilt. Fear of exposure. I walked back toward the kitchen table slowly. The cassette tape sat beside Grandpa's envelope under the dim stove light. And suddenly, I remembered something strange from years earlier. Dad and Grandpa screaming at each other outside the same cabin, one summer night. I was 23 maybe. I only heard one sentence clearly before Grandpa slammed the porch door. Some things should stay buried. At the time I thought they meant family history. Now I knew better. What happened next is not what I expected, my mother whispered suddenly. And it is not what they expected either. I frowned. What does that mean? Before she could answer, another voice spoke faintly in the background near her. Male. Distant. My mother gasped softly, then whispered 3 words that made my blood run cold. He came back home. The line disconnected immediately after. Part 6, my mother finally broke. I called my mother back at 2:07 a.m. She answered before the first full ring. Megan. Her voice sounded thin, frayed around the edges. What do you mean he's gone? A sharp inhale. Then crying. Not loud. The kind people try to hide by covering the phone. He left after dinner, she whispered. He took his truck and didn't come home. I rubbed my forehead slowly and looked at the cassette recorder still sitting on my kitchen table. Did you call Darren? Yes. And? He can't find him either. That answer bothered me immediately. Not because Darren failed to find him. Because she called Darren before calling the police. Families protect their own disasters first. Always. When did he leave? I asked. Around 6. 8 hours missing. Outside, rainwater dripped steadily from my balcony railing. Mom, I said carefully, did Dad know about the mineral rights? Silence. Long enough to hurt. Then I heard something small on her end. Ice clinking against glass. She was drinking. My mother almost never drank. What did he tell you? She whispered. There it was. Not denial. Confirmation. I closed my eyes slowly. How long have you known? He only found out last year. From who? Another silence. Then, Darren. The apartment suddenly felt too warm. I walked toward the window and cracked it open. Cold night air rushed inside, carrying the smell of wet pavement. Tell me the truth, I said quietly. All of it. My mother started crying harder then. For several seconds, she could barely speak at all. And suddenly, I realized something important. She was not crying because she got caught. She was crying because the lie finally collapsed under its own weight. When your grandfather got sick, she whispered, everything changed. I leaned against the kitchen counter and listened. Your father was terrified. Of what? Money. Simple answer. Honest answer. Maybe the first honest thing anyone had said to me in weeks. He retired too early, she continued. The investments dropped after the market crash. Darren kept asking for help. Then the hospital bills started. I remembered those months. Dad snapping over small things. Mom pretending everything was normal at Christmas. Darren disappearing for days, whenever money came up. We thought the land sale would fix everything, she whispered. Way. Not he. Way. That mattered. You forged my signature. I didn't. But you knew. Silence again. Yes. The word came out broken. A car passed outside below my apartment. Tires hissed softly across wet roads. You could have told me, I said. We thought you'd say no. You didn't even ask. We were ashamed. I almost laughed at that. Not because it was funny. Because shame after betrayal feels insulting somehow. Like they still wanted moral credit for feeling bad while doing it. My mother sniffed quietly into the phone. Your father kept saying he would fix it later. Fix it. Another family phrase. Everything temporary until consequences arrived. Did he know Grandpa left me the creek property? I asked. No. That answer came fast. Too fast. I stayed quiet. Finally, she corrected herself softly. Not at first. There it was. The real truth always arrives second. When did he find out? About 4 months ago. My chest tightened. Before Grandpa died. How? I don't know exactly. Lie. Small one. But obvious. My mother always paused before lying. Even as a kid, I could tell. I used to watch her blink twice fast whenever she hid something. She did it now, too. I could hear it somehow even through silence. Mom. Nothing. Tell me. Another shaky breath. He found papers in your grandfather's garage. What papers? I never saw them. But Dad did. Yes. I stared out the window into the dark parking lot below. A street lamp flickered once near the entrance gate. Who are they? I asked quietly. What? The people asking about the land. No answer. Mom. I don't know. Lie again. Bigger this time. Because fear entered her voice immediately after the question. Not confusion. Fear. You do know. She started crying harder. Megan. Who are they? Finally, she whispered something so quietly, I almost missed it. Developers. I frowned. Developers don't chase mineral rights. No, she admitted. These ones do. That sentence sat wrong instantly. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere far away again. I lowered my voice. What aren't you saying? My mother inhaled sharply. Then stopped herself. Like she almost crossed a line she could not uncross afterward. Mom. I can't. Yes, you can. No, she whispered. You don't understand your father when he gets scared. That sentence landed deeper than she realized. Not angry. Scared. I suddenly remembered Dad punching a hole through the garage wall when Darren disappeared during his gambling years. Remembered how he sat alone afterward, staring at his bleeding knuckles like they belonged to someone else. My father was not cruel in the loud way. He was cruel in the desperate way. The kind that convinces itself survival excuses everything. When did he leave tonight? I asked again. Around 6. Did you fight? Yes. About me? No. That answer surprised me. Then what? Silence. Then. The tape. Every muscle in my body tightened. How does he know about the tape? I told him. I shut my eyes immediately. Not anger this time. Exhaustion. Pure exhaustion. "He asked whether you found anything at the cabin," she whispered. I thought maybe if he knew there was proof, he would stop. Stop what? Another silence. Then finally, trying to get the rest of the land. Cold spread through me slowly. Not the cabin. Not the sold parcel. The hidden 17 acres. My father was still trying to access it. Even now. He said there's still time before transfer finalization, my mother continued weakly. He thinks if you sign voluntarily, none of this becomes public. Public? There it was again. Not guilt. Fear of exposure. I walked back toward the kitchen table slowly. The cassette tape sat beside Grandpa's envelope under the dim stove light. And suddenly, I remembered something strange from years earlier. Dad and Grandpa screaming at each other outside the same cabin, one summer night. I was 23 maybe. I only heard one sentence clearly before Grandpa slammed the porch door. Some things should stay buried. At the time I thought they meant family history. Now I knew better. What happened next is not what I expected, my mother whispered suddenly. And it is not what they expected either. I frowned. What does that mean? Before she could answer, another voice spoke faintly in the background near her. Male. Distant. My mother gasped softly, then whispered 3 words that made my blood run cold. He came back home. The line disconnected immediately after. Part 7, the box from the basement. Nothing happened for 2 weeks. Then something did. My father vanished again 3 days after returning home. This time, nobody pretended it was accidental. His truck stayed parked outside the house. His wallet remained on the kitchen counter beside the fruit bowl. Even his blood pressure medication sat untouched near the sink. Only he was missing. My mother stopped sounding defensive after that. Fear stripped the performance out of her voice completely. By the second week, she looked 10 years older. I noticed it the moment she opened the front door for me that Thursday afternoon. Gray roots showing near her temples. Hands shaking. The house smelled like cold coffee and lemon cleaner. She stepped aside quietly without speaking. I had not been inside since the morning they admitted selling the land. Funny how betrayal changes familiar rooms. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt safe anymore. My mother led me into the kitchen slowly, the same glass table, the same damp ring marks from old coffee cups. Only now there were unopened bills stacked near the microwave. Red stamps across some envelopes. Final notice. The sight almost made me angry again. Not because of money. Because they destroyed everything trying to protect appearances. My mother sat down carefully across from me. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. The refrigerator hummed softly behind us. Finally, she looked up. He called once. My chest tightened immediately. When? Tuesday night. What did he say? He asked whether you opened the basement box fully yet. Not are you okay? Not I'm safe. The box. I stared at her carefully. What did you tell him? That I didn't know. Did he believe you? She looked away instead of answering. No. He didn't. Outside, wind moved through the trees near the backyard fence with a dry, scratching sound. I brought it, I said quietly. My mother looked back at me. The box. I nodded once. Her shoulders dropped slightly. Relief. That surprised me. I need answers, I told her. You deserve them. First time she ever said that. And somehow, it hurt more than an argument would have. I carried the gray document box from the hallway and placed it gently onto the kitchen table between us. Dust still covered the corners. The metal latch clicked softly when I opened it. My mother flinched at the sound. Inside sat tax records, insurance papers, fishing licenses, old photographs, and the bright yellow file folder I noticed weeks earlier. No dust. Recently touched. I reached for it slowly. My mother closed her eyes immediately. Megan. Who opened this before me? Silence. Then finally. Your father. Why? He thought your grandfather hid ownership records. Ownership. Not memories. Not family papers. Just value. I opened the folder carefully. Inside sat copies of old land surveys and handwritten notes from Grandpa. One line had been circled heavily in red pen. Northern Creek access, restricted pending geological confirmation. Below it sat another sentence. Do not trust verbal agreements with Harrison Development Group. I looked up immediately. Who are they? My mother's face changed instantly. Not recognition. Dread. They approached your father after the hospital diagnosis. Grandpa's diagnosis. She nodded slowly. They offered to buy the entire property quietly before probate. How much? Her lips parted slightly. 3 million. The number sat between us like broken glass. Now everything made sense. The pressure. The forged signatures. The panic. The hidden paperwork. This was never about Darren's debt alone. That was simply the door they walked through. What's under the creek? I asked. I don't fully know. But Dad does. Another pause. He thinks there's natural gas. I leaned back slowly in my chair. Natural gas. Not gold. Not buried treasure. Something worse somehow. Because gas money turns ordinary people into scavengers. When did Grandpa find out? Years ago. Then why keep the land? My mother looked toward the kitchen window. Rain streaked softly down the glass. Because he hated what drilling did to neighboring farms. I remembered those arguments now. Grandpa calling certain businessmen grave robbers in clean boots. At the time, I thought he was exaggerating. Maybe he was. I kept digging through the folder. Then I found the letter. Typed. Unsigned. Dated 6 months before Grandpa died. We understand your daughter Megan Brooks remains successor beneficiary. We strongly advise reconsideration before transfer finalization complicates future acquisition. No company logo. No signature. Only a phone number at the bottom. A threat disguised as business language. My skin went cold reading it. You saw this? I asked quietly. My mother nodded once. And still you helped sell the land. Tears filled her eyes immediately. We thought if Darren stabilized financially, your father would stop chasing the creek parcel. I stared at her. You sacrificed me to manage him. That sentence broke something in her face. Completely. She covered her mouth and started crying hard enough her shoulders shook. Real crying this time. Ugly crying. Years of fear finally spilling out. I was tired, she whispered through tears. I was so tired of holding everything together. The honesty hit me harder than excuses. For the first time, she sounded human instead of defensive. Just exhausted. I looked down at Grandpa's papers again. Then I noticed something folded behind the survey maps. Small. Cream-colored. An envelope. My name written across the front, in Grandpa's handwriting again. Megan, only if things become ugly. My stomach tightened. I opened it slowly. Inside sat one document. Official county seal. Transfer restriction amendment. And attached behind it, a notarized affidavit from Grandpa himself. I scanned the page quickly, then stopped cold halfway through. Because the statement was not about the mineral rights. It was about my father. Specifically, if my son-in-law Richard Brooks attempts unauthorized transfer activity regarding Blackwater Creek property, This statement serves as evidence that he was explicitly informed. He holds no legal claim or negotiation authority. My heartbeat sped up immediately. Grandpa knew. Not suspected. Knew. And then I saw the final paragraph. The one that made my hands start shaking again. Richard Brooks previously attempted unauthorized access to trust documents on March 14. March 14. The date on the cassette tape. That wasn't random. That was the day Grandpa realized my father was already trying to take the land. The kitchen suddenly felt too quiet around me. My mother stared at the affidavit in horror. "He never told me this existed," she whispered. "No," I said softly. "He hid it." Outside, tires crunched slowly across gravel near the driveway. Both of us froze instantly. A car door slammed shut. Then another. My mother looked toward the window with panic spreading across her face. I stood up slowly from the table. Because deep down, before I even saw who arrived, I already knew. My father had finally come back. And he was not alone. Part 8, the final meeting. The headlights stayed on outside, bright against the rain. For 1 second, nobody moved inside the kitchen. Then my mother whispered, "Lock the door." But it was already too late. A knock hit the front porch hard enough to rattle the glass beside the entryway. Not my father's knock. Too sharp. Too confident. I stepped quietly into the hallway, while my mother stood frozen near the kitchen table clutching Grandpa's affidavit against her chest. Another knock came. Then a man's voice. "Mrs. Brooks, we only want to talk." Only want to talk. People who say that rarely mean it. I moved closer to the front window carefully and looked through the curtain edge. 2 men stood on the porch in dark rain jackets. Another remained near a black SUV parked crooked across the driveway. And beside the SUV, my father. He looked smaller somehow. Rain soaked through his flannel shirt. His shoulders slumped forward. One hand covered part of his face like he was ashamed to even stand there. But he still came. That mattered too. What happened next is not what I expected. Grandpa's voice echoed suddenly in my memory. And it is not what they expected either. I unlocked the front door before my mother could stop me. The porch smelled like wet wood and cigarette smoke. One of the men stepped forward immediately. Tall, clean haircut, expensive boots already muddy from the yard. "Ms. Brooks," he said calmly, "my name is Daniel Harrison." There it was. Harrison Development Group. The man smiled politely, but his eyes stayed cold. "We've been trying to resolve this situation privately." Behind him, my father would not look directly at me. Not yet. Rainwater dripped steadily from the porch roof between us. "You forged legal documents," I said quietly. Daniel kept smiling. "That's a serious accusation." "It's also true." My father finally looked up then. And for the first time in my life, he looked afraid of me. Not angry. Afraid. "We can still fix this," he said quickly. "Fix." Always that word. I crossed my arms slowly against the cold. "No," I answered, "you can't." The second man stepped onto the porch beside Daniel, wider build, balding, hands shoved into jacket pockets. Security maybe. Or intimidation. Same thing sometimes. Daniel spoke again. "Your grandfather complicated matters unnecessarily near the end of his life. He protected his property. He protected outdated fears." The confidence in his voice bothered me more than aggression would have. Like he was used to people giving up eventually. Daniel glanced toward the kitchen behind me. "May we come inside?" "No." A small pause. Then he smiled again. "We are prepared to offer a revised settlement." There it was. Money. Always money. My father stepped forward suddenly. "Megan, just listen for 1 minute." Rain dripped from his hair onto the porch boards. His hands shook slightly at his sides. Not from cold. I knew my father's fear tells by now. "What happened to you?" I asked quietly. That question hit him harder than yelling would have. His mouth opened, then closed again. For 1 second, he looked almost old enough to break. "I was trying to save this family," he whispered. "No," I answered softly. "You were trying to save yourself." The silence after that stretched long. Even Daniel stopped smiling for a second. Inside the house, I heard my mother crying quietly near the kitchen. My father looked toward the sound immediately. Guilt crossed his face fast enough to miss if you blinked. There. Human vulnerability. Tiny. But real. Then Daniel stepped forward again and ruined it. "The county transfer board meets Friday morning," he said calmly. "After that, litigation becomes very unpleasant for everyone involved." Threat. Polite threat. Same difference. I looked directly at him. "You already lost." His expression changed slightly. "Not much. Just enough. You seem very confident." "I am." Rainwater slid down the porch railing beside us. Then I did the one thing none of them expected. I smiled. Small. Calm. And reached into my coat pocket. My father's face changed immediately when he saw the folded document. Pure panic. "Megan," he whispered. Too late. I unfolded Grandpa's final affidavit carefully under the porch light. County seal visible. Notarized. Dated. Legal. Daniel's eyes moved across the page once. Then again slower. For the first time since arriving, he stopped pretending to be relaxed. "This document was never filed," he said quietly. "No," I answered. "It was preserved." Important difference. I watched him understand the problem in real time. The affidavit proved prior unauthorized access attempts by my father. Combined with the forged signature investigation, the entire land transfer could now trigger fraud review. Not civil disagreement. Fraud. Big difference. My father suddenly stepped forward. "Megan, please. Please." First time he said that word to me in weeks. I looked at him carefully. Really looked. His face seemed thinner, eyes bloodshot, beard uneven like he stopped caring days ago. He looked tired. Not evil. Just consumed. And somehow that felt sadder. "You chose them over me," I said quietly. "No. You did." I was scared. Honest again. Too late. But honest. Daniel reached slowly for the affidavit. "I'd like a copy." "You'll get one through attorneys." His jaw tightened immediately. There it was. The first crack. "You're making a mistake," he said. "No," I replied softly. "My family already made it." Wind pushed rain sideways, suddenly across the porch. Behind Daniel, the black SUV headlights still cut through the dark driveway. And then something unexpected happened. My father started crying. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just silent tears, while rainwater mixed across his face. "I didn't know how to stop once it started," he whispered. My chest hurt hearing that. Because I believed him. That was the worst part. People imagine betrayal arrives from monsters. Usually it arrives from weak people making smaller bad choices until they no longer recognize themselves. Daniel looked irritated now. He turned toward my father sharply. "Richard." One word. Warning inside it. And suddenly, I understood everything. My father was never fully in control here. He was useful. Manipulated through fear and debt and desperation, until backing out became impossible. Still guilty. Still responsible. But not the mastermind he imagined himself to be. I folded the affidavit slowly and stepped backward toward the doorway. This conversation is over. Daniel's polite mask disappeared completely then. If that document reaches county review, your family finances become public record. My mother gasped quietly inside the kitchen, but I just stared at him, because suddenly I understood something freeing. They already took everything shame could take from us. There was nothing left to threaten. I reached for the door handle. Then my father said one final sentence before I closed it. "Megan, the final document isn't the affidavit." I froze immediately. Rain hammered the porch roof harder now. "What?" My father swallowed visibly, then looked directly at me. "It's in the creek cabin." The door closed before I could ask anything else. Part 9, The Wind Chime. 3 days later, I drove back to the cabin alone. Friday morning had already changed everything. Tom filed the affidavit at 8:14 a.m. By noon, county investigators froze the remaining property transfer process connected to Blackwater Creek. Harrison Development Group denied wrongdoing publicly within hours. Darren stopped answering his phone entirely. And my father hired his own attorney. The strange part, I was not angry anymore. Just tired. The road to the cabin looked greener now that spring had finally started pushing winter away. Thin fog hovered above the creek banks while birds moved through the trees in sudden bursts of sound. The world kept going, even after families break apart. I parked beside the porch slowly. The wind chime moved gently in the morning air, still missing one metal tube. I stood there listening to it for a moment before unlocking the door. Inside, the cabin smelled like cedar and old paper again. Familiar. Safe somehow. The cassette tape sat inside my coat pocket. Grandpa's affidavit rested in my bag beside it. Evidence, proof, weapons. But the cabin itself still felt softer than all of that. Like Grandpa built at least one place in life, untouched by panic. I walked directly toward the creek-facing bedroom. Sunlight stretched across the floorboards in long, pale lines. For several seconds, I just stood there listening. The cabin creaked softly around me. Then I noticed it. The wall behind Grandpa's bed looked slightly uneven near the baseboard. One section carried newer screws than the surrounding wood. I almost missed it. But Grandpa was right about one thing. I noticed details. I found an old screwdriver beneath the kitchen sink and removed the panel carefully. Dust fell across my jeans immediately. Behind the wall sat a thin metal case wrapped in oilcloth. My heartbeat sped up. I carried it slowly to the kitchen table before opening it. Inside rested only 3 things: a stack of photographs, a property deed, and a handwritten letter folded neatly beneath both. I picked up the photographs first. Old drilling sites, neighboring farmland, black water running through dead grass. One image showed cattle lying motionless beside a creek bank. Another showed children holding bottled water outside a church. Dates stretched across the backs in faded ink. I understood immediately. Grandpa knew exactly what drilling could do here. That was why he fought so hard. Not greed. Protection. I unfolded the property deed next. The creek parcel had never fully transferred into standard ownership structure at all. Instead, Grandpa placed it into environmental preservation status years earlier under a private conservation agreement, which meant Harrison Development Group could never legally drill there without overturning multiple state protections first. The land itself was almost worthless to them without those rights. And suddenly, the entire scam became visible. They pressured my father because they hoped hidden transfer confusion would invalidate the preservation protections during resale restructuring. My father probably never even understood the full legal strategy. He just saw numbers. Debt disappearing. A way out. I sat quietly for a long time after that. The kitchen clock still frozen forever at 9:18. Wind moving softly outside. Then finally, I opened the handwritten letter. Megan, if you found this, then I failed to keep the family from hurting itself. That first sentence alone nearly broke me. I pressed my thumb against the paper and kept reading. Your father is not a bad man. Weak men are often more dangerous than bad ones because they need approval to survive. Remember that before anger hardens permanently inside you. I stopped there for a second. Because Grandpa knew me too well. The anger had started turning heavy lately. Not hot. Heavy. I continued reading. Darren inherited your grandmother's fear. Your father inherited my stubbornness. Your mother inherited responsibility for everyone, and you inherited the burden of seeing things clearly. Outside, the wind chime rang softly. 3 uneven notes. I wiped my eyes quickly and kept reading. Seeing clearly is lonely sometimes, but it will save you from becoming cruel when life gives you excuses to be. My throat tightened hard then. The faucet dripped once nearby. Same sound from the morning, everything began. The letter continued for another page. No secret fortune. No dramatic confession. Only advice. Protect the creek. Do not confuse forgiveness with trust. And one final request, written shakier than the rest. When all this is over, let the cabin stay honest. I folded the letter slowly after finishing. Then I cried. Not loud. Just quiet crying alone at Grandpa's kitchen table, while sunlight moved slowly across the floorboards. For the first time in months, the tears felt clean. Not panicked. Not angry. Just grief finally settling where it belonged. By evening, I walked down toward the creek carrying the broken wind chime tube I found beneath the porch steps earlier that morning. Bent slightly. Rust near one edge. Still usable. I reattached it carefully, while the trees moved softly around me. The chime rang differently afterward. Not perfect, but whole again. That mattered more. 2 weeks later, Darren showed up at my apartment carrying a cardboard box filled with old family photographs. He looked exhausted, smaller somehow. He apologized before I even opened the door fully. A real apology this time. No excuses attached. I did not forgive him immediately, but I let him inside. My mother started therapy that summer, real therapy. She told me once over coffee that silence can become its own addiction inside families. She was right. And my father. I visited him exactly once after the investigation started. We sat together outside a diner off Route 8 while trucks passed on the highway nearby. He looked older than I remembered. Ashamed too. For a while neither of us spoke. Then finally he asked the question quietly. Do you hate me? The coffee between my hands had already gone cold. I thought carefully before answering. Because the easy answer would have been yes. But it would not have been true. No, I said softly. And for the first time in years, my father cried without trying to hide it. The county case dragged on another 8 months after that. Harrison Development Group backed away once investigators uncovered the forged transfer chain. Nobody went to prison. Real life is less satisfying than movies sometimes. But the land stayed protected. That part mattered most. Last month, I spent one full weekend alone at the cabin, repainting the porch rails green again. Same color Grandpa liked. The wind chime still hangs beside the door. Every time it moves, I hear all of them differently now. My mother's fear. Darren's shame. My father's weakness. Grandpa's stubbornness. And my own voice finally becoming steady inside all that noise. Sometimes healing does not sound triumphant. Sometimes it sounds like a quiet cabin in the woods. A creek nobody managed to poison. And a wind chime finally ringing whole again.